Okay, for our next speaker, we've got Carol Stoker from, she's a planetary scientist at NASA Ames, and she's also an astrobiologist looking into future missions. And her talk is going to be about the search for life on Mars, what's next beyond MSL. And over to Carol.
Okay, so let me give you a little preview of what I'm going to be saying. So as you saw from Mike's talk, data from recent missions is providing new evidence that Mars may have had environments that can support modern life. Recent advances in climate modeling also suggest that habitable environments exist on modern Mars in the near subsurface. So I'm going to present some new mission ideas of how and where one might search for modern life. As you may or may not know from all the hype surrounding the MSL mission, it's really focused on an evolving story that searches for evidence of ancient life on Mars. And so it's a story that's evolved over decades of looking at images of essentially empty channels and empty lake beds and things that make it look like Mars was much warmer and wetter in the past. Much of it derived from the mail and camera system, so they definitely deserve a lot of credit for this evolving picture. But it's only in the last few years, like literally the last 4 or 5 years, that there's been compelling evidence that there's actually modern liquid water, or could be modern liquid water, and habitable environments on Mars today. So the scientific sort of approach to looking for life on Mars over the last decade and for MSL is really one of looking at the ancient life story. I was involved in a mission called Phoenix, and this landed in the North Polar region of Mars in 2008. And the key objective of this mission was to search for a habitable environment. You can read more about this at this paper, Stoker et al. 2010. It's a paper in Journal of Geophysical Research. And it actually summarized the case for a habitable environment at the Phoenix landing site based on the Phoenix observations. So what do I mean by a habitable environment? A habitable environment is an environment that terrestrial microbes could survive and grow in today. So it is actually referencing terrestrial microbes. So 3 factors are important for a habitable environment. There has to be liquid water available. There has to be a biologically available energy source. And the environment has to be, something about the environment won't kill you. It's non-toxic and conditions allow growth. So here's some of the evidence that Phoenix found, kind of in a summary, for liquid water. There was several lines of evidence. One of the, what Phoenix did is it was a mission that had a robotic arm and it dug a shallow trench. And in the very first place that we dug a trench, we saw white stuff. You might have even seen it actually made, the talk shows, the Leno and the Daily Show. We're talking about white stuff has been found on Mars. So basically, what that white stuff, we believe that was segregated ice. Segregated meaning that it is localized in one region, and typically in periglacial environments on Earth, segregated ice is formed by freeze-thaw processes. In other words, liquid water is involved in the formation of segregated ice. We also found from one of the instruments, this is the Thermal Evolved Gas Analyzer instrument, we found compelling presence of the mineral calcite, which many missions had looked for calcite on Mars and actually never found it. But in the Phoenix soil, there is evidence for calcite. And calcite is a mineral that's formed in the presence of liquid water. Finally, and a very surprising result, was that a soluble salt was found at the Phoenix landing site. It's a chlorine salt, And by salt, we don't mean table salt. You know, when we talk about salts, basically what we mean is things that will dissolve in water. So magnesium perchlorate is the salt, or calcium and magnesium perchlorate. Could be some of each. And it is actually a very, like all salts are, you put salt in water and you depress the freezing point. So it is a very potent depressor of freezing point. In fact, at the eutectic point, the freezing point of magnesium perchlorate solution is basically the current temperature at the Phoenix landing site, which is minus 70 centigrade. So this is a very good freezing point depressor. Furthermore, this magnesium perchlorate appeared to be patchy. There was spectral evidence that it was more concentrated in some places than in other places, which suggests that, again, there's transport as a result of liquid water mobilization. So I give it a smiley face for evidence of liquid water. Second was a biologically available energy source. And again, magnesium perchlorate is a big clue, because magnesium perchlorate is and can be a chemical energy source for subsurface life. And in fact, there's a lot of terrestrial microbes that use perchlorate as an energy source. And in fact, the use of perchlorate as an energy source is extremely ancient in the biological record. So it's something that biology learned to do very early on the Earth. I should say that on Mars, the average concentration we saw was like 0.5% of the total mass of the soil, which is a huge amount compared to wherever it's found on Earth. The only place it's ever been found at that high of concentration was in the Atacama Desert, in nitrate deposits in the Atacama. So 0.5% is a very large amount of perchlorate. But because it's a biological energy source, we give it a smiley face, and it's could be a habitable environment in the near subsurface. And then finally, environmental conditions. Currently, in the ground ice that the Phoenix sampled, it's currently too cold for growth to occur. But other conditions would allow growth. The pH is 8, which is actually very similar to the pH of the soil in your yard if you live in Pasadena. And no other toxic thing was discovered. Now, one might argue magnesium perchlorate is toxic. It's toxic to humans, and that's actually an important thing for future human exploration to consider. But it is not toxic to bacterial life, microbial life. Okay, and then finally, we would not give this a smiley face here for environmental conditions because it's so cold, but climate conditions are actually often much warmer than they are now. And the reason is this. Today, the obliquity of Mars is 25 degrees. It's actually very similar to the Earth. But the obliquity actually varies over time on Mars, and it varies in a quite extreme way. And over the last 5 million years, the obliquity has actually been getting higher, and 5 million years ago it was 45 degrees. At high obliquity, the solar flux at the North Polar region is 2.5 times stronger than the present value. So this is a plot of insolation at the Phoenix landing site over the last 10 million years. And here we are today at about 250 watts per square meter. This is the total amount of sunlight falling on the surface of Mars at the Phoenix landing site. But this is a plot of obliquity over the last, what the obliquity is doing over the last 10 million years, and showing that the obliquity is going up and down, between basically 0 and 45 degrees. And in consequence, the insolation is also going up and down, and at high obliquity, and now you get back here 6 million years ago, the average obliquity is closer to 45 degrees, and it goes even up and down from there. So basically the insolation is going up to almost 500. So it's 2.5 times higher. So the climatologists, of course, have been looking into this, and this is a plot from a paper in Richardson and Mission in 2005. And basically what this is showing is the number of days per year that liquid water could form. And it's as a function of latitude and longitude. So here we are today. This is the current conditions. So Phoenix was up here near 70 degrees north. Under modern conditions, liquid water, pure liquid water, this is not liquid water with salt in it, cannot form at any time during the year. It's way too cold. But at 45 degree obliquity, liquid water is forming, and I don't know if you can see these numbers, but these numbers are varying between 50 and 100. So 50 to 100 days a year, liquid water can form at the surface at the Phoenix landing site at 45 degree obliquity.
Is that days per Martian year?
This is sols, actually. It's Martian days. So, so we have cold, dry environments on Earth. They occur in the Antarctic, and we have very cold conditions in the Arctic. And this is kind of a schematic showing where Mars falls, kind of compared to environments on Earth. So current Mars is falling up here, where it's colder and drier than any environment on Earth that we have. And so we can't actually support growth under modern conditions. But here's Mars at 45 degree obliquity, and it's actually wetter and just slightly colder than University Valley, Antarctica, where there are modern life forms growing. So basically, Mars is kind of cycling between these two conditions, and it's cycling on relatively short timescales from the point of view of life surviving in the ground ice between times when it's warm enough for growth to occur. Okay, so just to warn you, the things I'm about to say are ideas presented to NASA at a recent workshop. This is the concepts and approaches for Mars exploration. They don't represent official NASA policy or plans for missions that are going to occur. So I'm going to tell you about things I think are a good idea. But all the things I'm going to talk about, or the thing I'm going to talk about, were presented at this workshop, and you actually can go watch the actual presentations online where they've been stored at that URL. So this is a mission we call Icebreaker Life, and this is a mission that's we've been studying at Ames Research Center for about 7 years, and really focused it down after the Phoenix mission. So this mission actually does a search for modern life in the subsurface ice deposits at the Phoenix landing site, and it uses the Phoenix lander. In fact, it uses almost the same kind of payload that Phoenix used. Uses the same camera system, uses one of the instruments that Phoenix actually flew, the wet chemistry laboratory. But what we had is, instead of a digging arm, which could not penetrate into the ice, we use a drill. So we drill down 1 meter. The drill is built here in Pasadena by Honeybee Robotics. This is the Icebreaker drill. It's capable of augering to 1 meter depth. And this drill we've been working over the last 5 years to get this drill into a high enough level of technology readiness that it could be flown. It is been tested in the dry valleys of Antarctica. It actually is going back to Antarctica this fall and being tested again in the dry valleys. And it has also been tested under Mars conditions in a Mars chamber, so Mars pressure and temperature. The drill is working very well. Because we are drilling into ice, we have to conform to planetary protection requirements. So basically the drill starts out, when we land, the drill is lying flat on the deck. Because it's only 1 meter, it can be a single string drill. So this lowers the risk of having to put drill segments together. It stands up, basically on an arm. It sits inside of a biobarrier when it's brought to Mars, stands up, drills through the biobarrier, or the biobarrier retracts, and then it drills into the ground. And then cuttings are basically captured off the drill auger flights by a sampling arm and deposited into instruments. A little more about the drill. This is rotary percussive, so it both hammers and twists, augers. And again, there's like a passive brush system that brushes samples off the auger flights. One of the purposes of this mission is actually to test the hypothesis: is there actually evidence of living organisms, or recently living organisms in the ground ice? And to do that, we use an instrument called the SOLID, or the Signs of Life Detector. It's actually built in Spain. It's the Center for Astrobiology in Madrid. Here's a recent paper describing it, paper in Astrobiology in 2011. The PI is Victor Paro. And basically, what this instrument does is it takes sample in, it mixes it with liquid water, sonicates it, which means it shakes it, and then the sample goes into a chamber. And in that chamber, there's an array where the individual cells of the array have been printed with a variety of antibodies to specific compounds. So these are specific biogenic compounds. You have to decide in advance what biogenic compounds you're going to look for, but you can detect up to hundreds of them using this array-based approach. And this is what the data looks like. It's a picture. You take a picture that shows which antibodies were detected. This is a picture of the instrument as it was. They have a fieldable version that they take out and do work in the field and look for evidence of modern life in extreme environments on the Earth. In addition to that, we will fly a copy of the Wet Chemistry Laboratory, which was flown on Phoenix. This is a picture of the instrument. This instrument detects ions that are useful for metabolism, including nitrate and perchlorate, and other ions that could be signatures of liquid water. An important reason for flying this instrument again is that nitrate, which is a very crucial thing for life on Earth, was not detected by Phoenix precisely because perchlorate and nitrate interfered with each other, and the perchlorate signature was so overwhelming that you couldn't tell if there was nitrate there or not. Okay, so this mission, Icebreaker Life, is robust. It's using proven technology, and it can be done for a cost comparable to the cost of the Phoenix mission. It addresses important science goals, especially the possibility of present life. And it makes measurements relevant to human exploration, and in particular, life, the presence of life, is in fact an important thing to know to prepare for human exploration. And drilling technology, at least in the last Mars design reference mission, drilling technology was one of the things that was put forward for people to do on Mars. So drilling technology is relevant to human exploration. So drill, baby, drill. That's our motto. Okay, so I'm not quite done. I'm going to show you the GIF movie of these amazing features that have been discovered by the HiRISE camera. These are slope streaks, but there are other and very compelling evidence of modern liquid water, and this is even better than the Phoenix site in the sense that this is actually liquid water today, not, even a few hundreds of thousands of years ago. If I can get this to work. So this is an image, and what you can see is basically this is a time sequence looking at a slope. And I don't have this set up to loop, even though I thought I did. So I have to actually click it to make it go. But what you can see is these streaks basically fading over time. So when they start out, you don't see them. And then they form. And you're actually looking, it's not obvious, but you're looking downslope. This is downslope in this direction. So basically, these things are forming in the summer in mostly high southern latitudes. So they're forming on very steep slopes. This is a picture from Alfred McEwen's paper in Science in 2011. Here's a picture of the slope streaks. Again, I think this might be down here. But they're forming on very steep slopes. On the crater walls, this happens to be on a central mountain inside of a crater, kind of like Gale Crater. And I should say Gale Crater doesn't have these. It's too bad. It would be great if it did. But, and there are many of them. In fact, here's a plot of the numerous, the slope streaks are the things in red here. No, sorry, the slope streaks are the blue squares. And we think that they're associated with salty groundwater because the temperature at which they're getting triggered is lower than the freezing point of pure liquid water. It's more like minus 20 centigrade. And the red dots here are locations where sodium chloride, I believe, has been discovered. So they appear to be associated with concentrations of salt. And they are found primarily on very steep slopes in the high southern latitudes. So these are actually, all of these things make them very tricky to get a mission to. But the geniuses of JPL long ago thought about this, and they actually designed something called the CliffBot, which basically is a tethered rover. And this is a complicated kind of approach. Our mission, the Icebreaker, is a simple kind of approach. This actually requires having this rover tethered above. And the tethering, the way that they designed it, was actually using another rover to belay it. It's kind of like the way mountain climbers would do it. So this is kind of a reprojection of the image I was showing you with the slope streaks evolving. So as you can see, these are very steep slopes. So you've got to be able to get this thing down a cliff. But there is, a way to do it technologically. So in conclusion, there's growing evidence for habitable environments on Mars in modern times. The technology exists, and missions are being studied that enable searching for life in those environments using an in situ approach. And that's it. Creon.
Hey, thanks, Carol. Great talk. A couple questions. One is, can you say anything about the biochip? I thought that was part of the Icebreaker. And then, next question is, those features that you just showed, those slope streaks, I know some time ago there were sort of reverse heretics who claimed that all that evidence of flowing water was really just evidence of flowing carbon dioxide. And what is your feeling on that position, and how did the slope streaks change that, the tenability of that sort of position?
Okay, let me take the biochip. I think what you're referring to is actually the signs of life detector. I think that's what you're referring to as the biochip. So basically, that uses a technology that's been derived from the biotech industry, the antibody microarray, or otherwise I think it's called the protein microarray. So that is, in fact, the biochip. Your second question was liquid carbon dioxide. So thermodynamically, liquid carbon dioxide requires pressure of 6 bars and temperature of, it's roughly in the 200 degrees C kind of range, or sorry, 200 degrees Kelvin. I don't remember the exact number, but thermodynamically, you're not reaching those conditions in these locations. The slope streaks are happening in the shallow subsurface. Basically, it's dust avalanching. That's why they disappear over time. You know, all the one that I showed the movie of, they're actually showing up every year, or every, Mars year in the proper season. They start flowing in the summer, and then they disappear over the winter as dust covers them up. So it's the shallow subsurface that's happening in. And the pressure, because these are in the high southern latitudes, the pressure in the atmosphere is actually very low. So you can get liquid carbon dioxide theoretically forming on Mars, but it's going to happen in the deep subsurface because you have to be under 6 bars of pressure.
One more question.
The ice that was exposed by the Phoenix landing, did that sublime in the period they were observing it?
So the ice that was there, it was actually pure ice, pure in the spectral sense. With a very small amount of grains of soil in it, it would not have appeared white, or you would not have seen a spectral feature of water ice associated with it, which you did see. That feature disappeared over time, and so the ice darkened, and that actually was the result of sublimation. So there was some small percentage of essentially dust particles in it, and over time they formed a lag deposit covering the white ice. There now have been, also from high-rise, pictures of fresh craters in not as far north as the Phoenix landing site, but in a large set of relative sort of 45 to 50 degree latitudes where fresh craters have formed what is apparently fresh ice, which then disappears over time as it either gets covered by dust or the ice sublimes enough that the white, or feature that allows you to see that there's water ice from imaging goes away.
Is it your opinion there's big oceans on Mars covered by a small dirt?
Yeah, oceans is probably too strong of a term. There's clearly large regions of Mars where there's icy material in the near subsurface, like within a meter or a few meters of the surface.